This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Quick disclaimer before we get into this conversation. The sound quality is not what it should be. I don't know what was going on, but I was trying a new service, and that would be Zoom, and I'm not totally happy with the way that this sounds, so I probably won't use it again. So my apologies if this is a little rough on your ears and spots. The bit rate was a little lower than it should have been, and there's some other artifacts floating around that were not there when we were recording. So my apologies. Otherwise, enjoy. Welcome to this Where Did the Road Go edition of, Fringe News, I guess I'm calling it for the moment until I come up with something better. And I am joined with Adam Sane.
Hello. Apparently I'm really loud.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Greg Bishop.
Hello, good evening.
And Red Pill Junkie.
¿Qué pasa?
And Adam, I've met you in person. You are very loud.
I am. It's true. Thank you, Soraya.
Not in a bad way.
How did you get through that 4 hours in the car with me?
It was quite enjoyable, actually. And it was 8. It was 4 down and 4 back.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. It was 8.
Seemed like 8 for Soraya.
All right, so we're going to cover some news articles, and I really wanted to do this because this one popped up today, and it kind of it bugged me. So this has actually been published in Cosmos, the Science of Everything, cosmosmagazine.com, and it says, physicists find we are not living in a computer simulation. And basically, this team of physicists in the UK have determined that reality cannot be merely simulated by simulations generated by a massive extraterrestrial computer. And it basically comes down to the fact that some physical phenomena would be impossible to simulate. But the way they're looking at this, it's as if there's a computer on another planet creating our reality. Everything they're talking about would have to be created from it's like it says researchers calculated that storing information about a couple hundred electrons will require a computer memory that would physically require more atoms that exist in the universe. Well, that's all well and good, but I would think that if we were living in a simulation, that the thing generating the simulation wouldn't be in our universe. It would be creating our universe.
Yeah, our universe is inside that computer. Therefore, the computer power, the processing power of that computer is literally bigger than the universe. But anyway, I mean, I've always taken the idea of we're living in the Matrix, right?
Right.
More as a metaphor than an actual, literal theory. I think that it works in the idea to establish that what we call reality is only a tiny subset of a bigger reality. And if you see it that way, then, it works. It's the kind of thing that you start to conclude once you read things like accounts by people who have experienced near death, and they have allegedly gone to other realms of existence, and interacted there. And the number one thing in common with all these accounts is that they felt that was more real than normal reality.
Yeah.
Kind of like a hyper reality. And I find that fascinating. That to me says that our waking experience, in normal consciousness, is kind of something that is kind of like filtered down, probably by the small amount of information that our limited senses are able to perceive, and also our brain is able to interpret.
Yeah, well, the brain is a filtering mechanism anyway.
Exactly,
Yeah, well,
exactly.
I think the idea is that everything going on is a subroutine or a subset of whatever this, whatever that computer's running. But the problem is, I think I don't know how they conceptualize it, and I'm going to start to sound stupid here, how these physicists conceptualize it. My conception of it was sort of like what Miguel said, but it's like a computer, but not is a computer. You think there's like some giant alien with a mouse and a keyboard tapping away and giggling. I don't think really that's the idea. The idea is that there is something that is simulating what we think is reality, and that we think it's reality. But the thing is, I think it's what you use as your model, and I think the model would be more like, at least for me, would be that it is a computer that runs itself. In the same way that you would say that rocks become people eventually. It's going to, or not eventually, but some of them do. It's programmed to, by its very nature, it runs in a certain way. And on the other end of that, as information, if you talk about information theory, which is something I'm still trying to get my head around after a year here, information, it's like quantum physics. If you say you understand it, there's something wrong with you, I think. But anyway, the idea about information theory is that the universe and reality and matter and all that is not made up of matter. It's made up of information at the very basic level. Like before it's atoms, before it's all that, it is just bits of information. And I think the fear is that somebody controls those bits of information somewhere up the line that we have no idea. My idea of information theory that I've seen, which, I guess makes me feel better, is that by our interaction with this information, we create what the information shows us, if that makes any sense. It is a self-perpetuating system of, our brains, our minds, our instruments, everything we use to determine what reality is brought into existence out of this quantum soup of information by our interacting with this quantum soup of information, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's how I understand it right now, in a really stupid doofus, all I have is a bachelor's degree in art history level.
Now, to me, what's interesting is to speculate if the universe, in a way, behaves or processes information like a computer, meaning, it's using kind of like the same logic. Then the question arises, can it be hacked? And I think that for people who practice magical practices, the answer is yes.
Sure. I would agree. There's also when we had Jim Elvich on, I mean, one of the things he's working on is how you can see digital traces in the universe, not just as opposed to analog data. It seems to represent data digitally, and that's part of the reason that they look at it as possibly a simulation of sorts. But simulation's really the wrong word, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, the language traps us. When you say it's a simulation, it's like, well, we live in it. I mean, what's the reality behind that simulation? Yeah. Some giant alien with a computer? I think the reality behind the simulation is that it is information before everything else. This is a model I'm messing with right now. I may change in the future, but right now that one is compelling to me, especially because of the implications for the paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you have the holographic model, which preceded it. Before we got into computers, we had this idea of this universe being projected from a different reality, basically, which as like a hologram.
Yeah, exactly. I read many years ago Michael Talbot's book, but I can't even remember what the hell was in it anymore. The Holographic Universe.
That was a great book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot.
Yeah, Whitley Strieber was a huge fan of it. I think they
They were friends.
Yeah, I think they were friends. Yeah.
Is that where the idea starts of the idea of the universe as a simulation?
It might be.
Or did others have that thought?
That's a really good question. Is it David Bohm? Is he the physicist that first started presenting the holographic idea, I think, back in the 50s or 60s or so?
Maybe. I know that Bohm, but yeah, I pronounce it Bohm, but yeah, I know the name, but maybe he did. I mean, it's probably other people thought of it in a different way before that, when things are not, the basic idea is the map is not the territory, I think, and they were trying to figure out what lies beyond the map. And if our maps can be more, our maps of reality or whatever you want to call it, can be more accurate or testable, or and when it gets to the thing where this sounds like the story you've dug up, Soraya, has to do with, it's a testable hypothesis. If you want to test if we're in some sort of simulation, and I think their idea is if we can come up with something that we don't know the answer to and create something random, how can that be coming from someplace else that already knows what it is? I don't know. I bet that's probably a really stupid interpretation or a wrong interpretation, but that's what I understand from what you said about the story.
And the writer,
the basic premise is reality is an illusion, and it's what the Gnostics were saying, thousands of years ago.
And even the writer of the article says there's a caveat to this conclusion. If our universe is a simulation, there is no reason that the laws of physics should apply outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing about in this information theory thing I'm reading, is that the laws of physics apply in our universe because we came up with them.
Yeah.
And they could be completely wrong in some other universe or some other reality or whatever you want to call it. And that the other thing that fascinated me, that this person, one of the essays I read in this book, it's called Information and the Nature of Reality. It's a collection of essays. One of the essayists in there said that physics comes from a Christian top-down boss is at the top view of the universe. And that has affected the way people think about how they come up with their ideas about physics and reality. And he says that it's inescapable, especially in the West, that people would be thinking like that. And most of the physicists you hear, whether they're religious or not, they come from that tradition, and whether they know it or not, they may be dealing with that, where there is a unified field or a theory of everything or whatever that ties us all together. And his idea was maybe there isn't a top-down. Maybe it's kind of more like a bottom-up, involving all of us.
Yeah.
And this is something that Rupert Sheldrake has also been contesting, the idea of thinking of nature as being governed by laws that were, decreed by a ruler, right, God or whatever. But he proposed the idea that the laws of nature maybe are more like habits, that they're not like eternal or perennial. Like, for example, the idea that the constant in the speed of light. And apparently there were some research that was validating this assertion, saying that at the beginning of the universe, light had a different speed.
Yeah.
So we really don't know if, maybe trillions of years in the future, light will have, a different speed than what we clock it right away. But this is something that we don't want to talk about, because the one of the cornerstones of science is the idea that what you record, what you can measure in our location in the universe will be valid, on the other side of the universe and forever and ever.
Right. Yeah. Nothing. Everything stays static.
Exactly.
Yeah. The only constant is us, though. It's not. I start to sound so glib. Well, everything seems to come back to human consciousness and how it interacts with whatever it is that's supposedly reality or matter or whatever it is, and that if we're the ones experiencing it, then we have a really, I guess I could get a scientist. We could get a scientist on, and he could tell me I'm full of crap. But our interaction with it affects how it's seen. I mean, time is experienced differently by different people, and it may not be a constant. And I was talking to a bunch of kids at UC Irvine just a few days ago, and I was saying that they were trying to ask me questions, and they would say, do you believe this, or what do you think this is, and I said, you have to realize that we're thinking about this stuff based on the way we can describe it. Our reality is described by the language, and that's how we see whatever it is. If if I show somebody from the South American jungles a piano, I have no idea what their experience is of it. I don't have any idea what they think it is, how they interact with it, anything like that. But it's just as valid as my experience of it. It's just that they don't have the same language or concepts to deal with it, and they may think it's some totally different thing that works for them as a system. It makes no sense to us whatsoever.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just, but we all have brains and eyes, and we see things spatially and all that. So some things are constant with us, but not for fish, not for monkeys, not.
Is this the same kind of concept as the 4 blind men and the elephant?
I guess, but the 4 blind men would have to either have different degrees of blindness or something, or be from completely different types of cultures or species.
Well, they're all grabbing a different part of the elephant is the thing.
Yeah, well, the thing is that elephant, in my interpretation, what I've been trying to say here, and I think Miguel and to some extent Soraya, is that depending on where you're coming at it from, that's going to be what the thing is, and it's indeterminate until you have your interaction with it, like in a quantum physics way. It's I don't know if it's an elephant. It's a blob of a thing that most of us would probably think was an elephant, but before any of us look at it, it doesn't really make any difference what it is. It's just an event in space-time, I guess. I don't know.
However, I would argue that probably the entire universe is conscious to some degree, but it may not perceive things the same way we do. So we define it based on our perceptive devices, our eyes, ears, et cetera, whereas other things define it with other senses and other ways of interacting.
I guess. I think we're also, once again, we're saying, well, the universe has its own conscious. I don't know what the universe does. I think, like you're suggesting here, that it's probably some sort of, what's the word? I don't even know if it's a self-aware system, but it's some kind of system that it has that organizes and adjusts itself and all that as if it's a consciousness. Although I don't know if we could even conceive what that kind of consciousness would be. And
no.
Using the word just makes us, we think, oh, it's a thinking being that's making decisions like what? No, I mean, to me, it's like, wind and waves. I described this one time. They go along their merry way doing whatever they want to do, and you can ascribe meaning to it, but they're just doing the thing that they do.
Right.
Again, it's just being limited by language.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the word consciousness, what does that mean? The word simulation, I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, it's just our meaning, our limitation.
Yeah,
I always thought the whole simulation of the universe thing was. I mean, I always thought it was just kind of an interesting mental exercise, but I never put much stock into it as something that could be real anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Either getting up out of bed in the morning is an interesting mental exercise.
I mean, in some, you could really make a case that the whole simulated universe really starts with religion. I mean, look at the religions that have creation myths. I mean, that in some ways is God creating a simulation, if you really want to get technical.
Mm-hmm.
So you could really say the idea starts there. Well, hell, maybe they were right. I don't know.
Infinite regress, yeah.
Yeah.
We can only deal with what we've been given to deal with, and that's the language and concepts people have given to us that have come before us. I keep going back to Dean Radin's quote. He told me a long time ago, and he said this was about studying the paranormal and trying to measure it. He said, look, studying the paranormal with our instruments is like trying to kill a fly with a sledgehammer. And that's what I think about language. It's like we've got this big, stupid tool that's banging around and breaking the thing. And we think it's something very delicate that they can describe everything. And it's not. It's an approximation.
But how can we get out of that? Or can we? Are we just forever going to be limited by that?
Acid, man.
Or creating a new language. By the way, I just rewatched Arrival this weekend. I bought it on Blu-ray, and that's a great example of how adopting a new language can really change your perception of reality, even your perception of time.
Esperanto is still waiting to be used. I don't know why we don't just get on it.
Hey, William Shatner used it through a whole movie. So.
Yep, that's the way I was thinking. Yeah.
Huh. All right.
All comes down to perspective, and who knows what the perspective that works is the one that seems to either work so well enough for you, keep you alive, or allow you to beat other people over the head hard enough that they don't question you.
I was kind of being facetious with the Esperanto thing, but I think the guy that created that, wasn't he trying to make a language that would be more efficient?
Yeah,
wasn't that his purpose?
And that would like end wars because everybody understand each other. It was a big thing, I think, in the 50s and 60s, especially late 50s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
really?
I've got a whole record album of a woman singing in Esperanto. It's great.
What was the name of the movie, the William Shatner movie? I've seen it, but I can't remember the name of it now.
Oh, I can't remember either. I've got a DVD of it. I actually went out and bought one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it made it to DVD.
Yeah, Shatner Esperanto Incubus.
Yeah, thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Yep. He phonetically learned all his lines in Esperanto for the whole movie. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie.
It's like watching a bunch of aliens. It looks like a Ingmar Bergman film, except aliens put it together.
Uh-huh.
All
It's all about Satanists and satanic cults and.
Okay, aliens have seen a couple of horror movies and then and Seventh Seal and then made their own movie.
That's a good description.
I have not seen it.
Yeah. Incubus, 1966. Filmed entirely in the constructed language of Esperanto. Directed by Leslie Stevens, creator of The Outer Limits.
Huh. Yeah.
Right.
There's the Shatner connection,
Yeah. 7 degrees of Shatner.
All right, let's move on to another news article, and this one's not that recent. This was from May, but I did not know this was done, and so it's definitely worth talking about. And this is final results determining if the Starchild Skull is part alien.
Again.
Well, when this came out, I had what's his name that had the skull.
Lloyd Pye.
Lloyd Pye.
I had Lloyd on. Lloyd seemed like a really good guy, but he didn't seem to, he was so convinced that this was a gray alien. That's all he was really willing to accept about it.
Yeah.
Do you remember what his proof for Bigfoot was?
I don't think I ever knew about his proof for Bigfoot.
Well, he said that Bigfoot was real because, Bigfoot actually would have been the dominant species on the planet if the aliens hadn't come down and messed with the DNA.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wow, that sounds like the subgenius creation myth.
Huh. But the thing about it's definitely an odd skull, and like the people examining it are acknowledging, yes, this is an odd skull, but with enough scientific work on it, they were able to show that at least part of the anomalies are because the age was set wrong. They were looking at it as an adult skull, and it was actually, I think they said, a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old, something like that. And they said when that is brought into assessment, it's not as odd. Plus some of it, like, the eye sockets were worn away. There was once a nose, as evidenced by a visible nasal structure.
Didn't they get some DNA out of it? At least a little of it. I've heard 3 or 4 reports, and every single one of them from people that were close to the skull and wanted it to be alien said no, it was just all human DNA.
Well, the first tests said it was like the mother was human, but the other stuff was undetermined.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's where it was when Lloyd died, because Lloyd was still saying, well, that undetermined part is the alien part. That's why it's undetermined. And that wasn't necessarily the case, and no one was saying that was the case, but that's how he was reading it. They said that the osteologist found that the Starchild skull did not correspond to any of the animal primate skulls. They stated the skull was the size and the bone was the thickness of that of a 5-year-old. When being compared to human skulls, the skull most resembled that of a Down syndrome child's skull. Wormian bones were noted, and the flattened head was discussed as a possible reason for the widened occipital area. No banding marks were present, ruling out manual manipulation. The eye sockets were reported as broken and missing edging. The ear regions were lower than normal, and the ear canal seemed larger. They really did a very thorough testing of this, and they did find all the DNA to be human once they finally were able to sequence it all.
It just took a while and cost a lot. It didn't happen until after Lloyd died, till they had enough money and the technology had advanced to the point where they could use smaller amounts and be more accurate and all that.
Yeah, it says from the inside of the skull, where the skull was the least contaminated, Chase Kletsky was able to extract and package several samples of a powder that contained DNA and forensically package a piece of the maxilla that contained a tooth that had viable DNA for both mtDNA and Y-DNA testing.
Okay.
And concluding the investigation and compiling the entirety of the scientific data from the many scientists involved, we can safely say that the Starchild skull is not alien, nor a hybrid of human and alien. He was 100% a human male child with profound deformities. When we began the investigation, we had no expectations besides completing the testing and examination by credentialed scientists to the extent that modern science and technology could take us. We were not working from speculation or relying on any research done in the past besides the carbon dating. We were not hoping for the Starchild skull to be human or alien, even though that discovery, although unprovable at this time without comparable DNA, would have been groundbreaking. And that was the point I made to Lloyd. He's like, well, it's a gray alien skull. And I'm like, well, you can't prove that without a gray alien skull. Now, can you? And he's going, but we have one. And I'm like, we do? And he's like, yeah, the Starchild skull. And I'm like, oh, man. That's just an argument you're not going to win, because he's clearly, he's so ingrained in that belief.
Yeah, it's a belief. And once you get into belief, this is why I have my do not engage thing. It's like, if somebody just has this belief, you're never gonna, it's like telling a Christian Christ didn't live or something like that. You can't do it. It's not that he's right or you're right or whatever. It's just it's a waste of time for both of you.
Yeah.
What was the name of that cryptozoologist? I think she's a veterinarian that tried to sequence the DNA from alleged Bigfoot hair samples.
Is that Melba Ketchum?
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently she had tried to use quotes from scientific papers, but she didn't realize that some of those scientific papers were kind of like almost like using terms in jest. The idea of angel DNA. I don't know. I guess she was kind of like getting to the point of saying that the Bigfoot was a hybrid between humans and, I don't know, Nephilim or whatever. But again, this is the problem of people in this field that are trying to use these tools. They really don't know how to use them. They are starting their assumptions from the wrong point of view. Like you said, Soraya, I mean, they're trying to prove, okay, this is an anomalous DNA sample. How do you know that? How do you know that you don't have another anomalous DNA sample to compare it with?
Yeah.
So,
And just because it looks weird doesn't mean that it's from outer space.
yeah,
And the Melba Ketchum thing, I think what she did.
Yeah.
I think what she had, she made her own peer-reviewed journal.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, she claimed,
and I think that's what you're talking about, is where she wrote all that in that. Yeah.
She claimed that she did the research properly, and that the other journals would accept it until she told them it was Bigfoot DNA, and then they refused to publish. So eventually she bought one of the journals and published it herself, which, I mean, I can see that happening, but there's also so much sketchiness in all of this, you don't know what to believe.
Why did she not just tell them that, I don't know what this is, can you test it?
She did, and they said it came up as an unknown.
All right. Then she should have just left it there.
Yeah, but she didn't, because she said, well, it was taken from Bigfoot, and this proves Bigfoot,
Again, there's the belief getting in there.
Yeah, and there's also, for example, Brian Sykes, that apparently did DNA research on the remnants of a descendant from Xena, which was this alleged machine that was captured in a remote Russian village.
Yeah, okay.
And then apparently mated with several of the village people, so that tells you something of how boring life was there. and apparently what he came up with is that it was sub-Saharan DNA. So he came up with the idea that maybe Xena was kind of like an escaped slave or something. And some people say, well, that settles it. But at the same time, is that so? Because, I mean, he's only proving the provenance of the DNA, right? But could it be that Xena, came from Sub-Sahara, but not necessarily from Homo sapiens, right? And this other thing that I left wondering when I read that is, you're proving the DNA is probably human, but what about the way that those genes are expressing? In other words, what about epigenetics? Because then maybe you could come up with the idea that Bigfoot, it could be 99.99% equal to us genetically, but those genes are expressing themselves differently, because, I don't know, environmental factors or whatever, and that to me is interesting, because then you could make the argument that, the gene sequencing wouldn't give you the complete answer to the mystery.
Yeah, well, I wish we had somebody here that was a DNA expert that could tell us the ins and outs of DNA sequencing, how you tell a percentage of how much something is of another species, and how significant that is. I don't know, and if you don't know, and most people don't, you can supposedly say whatever you want about it, and especially in paranormal fields, it's a lot of things go unchallenged because it's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
And if you do challenge it, you're not in the club anymore. So that's why I really like when people are saying things that are not just games saying to be unpopular, but saying something that's like, really, just look over here, consider this. And I think the main problem here, as we're discussing all these different opinions, the way you come to conclusions, all that, is that for some stupid reason, people need to come to a conclusion. I do not know where that, why where that comes from. My wife yesterday, this is really interesting. She works with kids at the library. She's a children's librarian. She would ask children, what is your favorite color? And she said they were stumped. They're just kind of like, so she said, out of just weird inspiration, she said, what's your favorite color today? And they would, every one of them would answer her right away. Because they figured they had to commit to something that they might not be sure of. I think there's a really, really interesting lesson there for all of us. Why do you have to commit to why do you have to commit to a point of view, especially with something as weird as the stuff we talk about?
Yeah.
I think it's stupid to commit to a point of view forever and then, sit in the corner and defend it from all comers. That's why the magazine was called Excluded Middle. I think we're trying to mine that from real early on. We don't like to be pigeonholed. And if you're not pigeonholed, your mind is free to wander. You're also, subject to people yelling at you from both sides saying you're a skeptic, you're a believer. So, which I know if I hear that, I'm on the right track. It makes me happy.
That's true.
Sorry, I changed the subject.
No, that's fine. That's that's perfectly fitting for what we're talking about.
Yeah, that was very well said, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, there'll be a comment on one of the shows being like, well, these guys are just asking more questions. Where I want answers. And it's like, well.
If you want answers, quit listening to the show.
You need to also tell them, be careful where you get those answers from.
Yeah, but, sometimes people aren't.
Yeah, somebody's going to give you an answer. And then they're going to ask you for money or make you drink the Kool-Aid.
They aren't so critical all the time. They just want an answer. They want to know that it's what they want it to be.
Yeah, where's the fun in that?
That's my next T-shirt. Why do I have to make up my mind, asshole?
I have a good friend. He's been on my show, and he is so convinced that he has this technology to see ghosts.
I've heard that.
That he knows what. And I love the guy to death, but him and I fundamentally disagree on what the nature of any of this stuff is, and he just is so convinced that he's got this answer and that he knows and that he could just definitively prove it. And I'm sitting there saying, well, I don't really think that you can. And I'm also like, I don't want it proven. I don't want you to prove it because the mystery is going to be gone.
I don't care if mystery is gone. What I care about is having enough. I don't make a decision on anything till I have overwhelming evidence, and especially if something's happened to me personally, that I can make that decision. And then, I don't force it on other people. I say, look, this is how I came to this decision. If you can make this for yourself, then, welcome. Or if you think I'm full of crap, show me how I'm full of crap so I can change my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to be able to prove this stuff to people.
No,
you can't prove it.
Finally, prove, right? I mean, for example, maybe that's one of the other news that Soraya wants to talk about. The idea that some people went and analyzed the alleged samples of Yetis, and they come to the conclusion, well, the Yetis were nothing but Himalayan bears, case closed. And people like Lauren Coleman are saying, well, not so fast, and they're making a good argument. But at the same time, it would be dishonest to try to perpetuate a mystery just for the sake of perpetuating, because I feel that's what religions do. They want to keep perpetuating the mystery because they want to remain relevant, right? They want to remain, there for people to seek answers and say, yeah, we have the answers here. Or if we don't have the answers, well, that's because God doesn't want us to have the answers. I mean, even the Pope, John Paul Pope II, when there was a gathering of physicists and astronomers, he cautioned them to try not to peer too much into the origins of the universe, because in his mind that was only God's business and no one else's. And you tell that to someone like Stephen Hawking, you are going to piss him off tremendously. And I think he should be pissed off. I mean, I question whether human beings are capable of reaching to the bottom of some mysteries, but at the same time, that shouldn't stop us from keep trying, to
Exactly.
find those answers, because even if we don't never get them, we will get something out of it, maybe just, by mere trying. Right? It's Jacques Vallée, I think in one of his most recent interviews, I think it was with George Knapp on Coast to Coast, he says that in his mind, even if UFOs may be unknowable, that it really can't be known or understood by human logic, that shouldn't really stop us trying to understand them and trying to even try to apply the tools like the scientific method, as inefficient as and unreliable as the scientific method can be for trying to tackle these kind of questions, right? We're aware of the limitations of the scientific method. That doesn't give us the right to say, well, let's toss the scientific method right off the bat because it doesn't work. No. Try to use the scientific method as much as you can, and once you reach the limit of it, okay, try to use another tool.
Yeah, or adapt it.
I think what I'm saying here is that once we really stop, when someone says, well, I have all the answers, I can prove this definitively, so you don't need to seek anymore. Yeah. I think once we stop seeking, and we just think, oh, now it's just mundane, and that's it. There's no other. This is the answer. I don't necessarily see that as a good thing. I think we need to seek a little bit more and just keep going. I think it's good for us as a species.
Yeah, that's not the way that science works. For every question that science has managed to answer, 2 or 3 more questions
pop up. Right.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the way that probably will ever be.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about science. I think I'm more like looking at things of just like what you were saying about religion, Reptile, where some of this stuff just becomes religion, and I feel like if you're going to try to prove something like the paranormal, you are kind of getting into the realm of religion in many ways.
I guess the way that it's treated right now, I don't think the way our models work for how to prove something is real or how to prove it in science is amenable to a lot of these things about how Bigfoot exists or how ghosts operate or how the UFOs manifest or whatever. That the fact of, like Miguel said, trying to figure it out should be something that drags people forward into finding new ways to find things out about things. Because I think, especially with the UFO subject, maybe the others too, as soon as we figure out a working model that seems to work, it's going to change. I think it's going to change and show us a whole new part of itself that is not amenable to what we thought it was. And so we'll have, 30% of it figured out or 50% or something, and then it's going to go back to almost zero as soon as that starts working. Kind of like the effect when you're doing paranormal research and like somebody can do really well at the beginning and then suddenly they suck right after that.
Yeah,
true.
I think there's some kind of denial. I don't know about denial, but there's some kind of something that negates what we think it is as soon as we find out what we think it is.
That's an anarchic
I guess so.
UFOs, right?
Yeah. I can't remember who I was talking to, and they said that it was Jeff Ritzman on my show. He said John Alexander, when they got finished with, or when they stopped doing the stuff at the Skinwalker Ranch, he said what's going on there? And he said it's the trickster. That's all it is. We couldn't get anything to work right. We got all kinds of compelling evidence, but nothing to prove anything. We got way more evidence than anybody else, but it made no sense, and we can't present it to anybody. So I don't know if it's self-negating or what, but it's maybe it's something we put there just to keep ourselves going, at least in the way we look at it. I have no idea. It's that gray thing, that gray goo that's not the elephant yet, but everybody thinks, all the blind people think they have their part of the elephant, and that's what it is. But in the middle, there's no elephant. There's just some indeterminate thing.
Well, I can tell you, I've changed my mind of the nature of the UFO phenomenon at least 4 times in my lifetime. So
good, that's great.
I wonder if Bigelow tried to not only get scientists like Alexander and Palais and people of myths, but also maybe what if you bring a Tibetan monk, to Skinwalker? What will happen? I wonder if he tried to use other alternative means to try to get some response out of the phenomenon.
I don't know if they did. That'd be a question for any of those people, I suppose. I would bet that they didn't, but I would be really happy if they did. Get somebody who just doesn't what's the word? Doesn't buy into their Western scientific, I was about to say BS, but method, and see how they would come at it. Like Ayurvedic practitioner, or like you said, a Tibetan monk, or a Australian Aboriginal or something. Just bring them in there, or for that matter, bring in a couple of Native American tribal members that seem engaged, and see what they say about it, and pull all those different perspectives in to see, can we determine what this thing is by successive bits of information that are not rooted in our culture and our way of thinking.
And the article that Red Pill was mentioning is actually from 2015, or it's corrected in 2015. It was actually from 2014, it's from the Royal Society Publishing in their Biological Sciences Department. Genetic analysis of hair samples attributed to Yeti, Bigfoot, and other anomalous primates, and it turned out to be Himalayan bears and one other thing, so some other animal as well.
Now that's Brian Sykes' research, that he came to the suggestion that the Yeti was probably some kind of like new species of hybrid bear, a mix between a Himalayan bear and polar bear. So kind of like a relic or a missing link. But now there was another more recent news from people who did another research of 6 or 7 Yeti samples, who came to a similar conclusion that those samples were of bears, and that's for another. I think it was for a documentary. I'm not sure if it's for National Geographic or something, but this came out this week.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can find it for you. Yeah, keep talking, please.
But the thing about this, it's like, okay, so they checked all these hair samples and they came up with bears and so on and so forth, but that doesn't preclude the idea that there's something else out there. It's just that these weren't that necessarily. But it's impossible to prove a negative like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and there's also the idea that this is something that Lauren Cullen was arguing, that cryptozoologists have known that in Tibetan folklore there are like 3 kinds of Yetis. There's a more human-sized Yeti, like I think is that is called the Mete or Meti, and the bear-like Yeti, which is the bigger one. I think that these guys are using the samples that will be from the bigger one. And even if you say, okay, so the bigger Yeti is totally a bear, okay, but that doesn't mean that there are other, another species of known primates that could be, roaming around in the Tibetan forests.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys ever read John Keel's Jadoo.
Yes.
That's a great book, and
It
also
is.
talks about the Yeti.
Yeah, I haven't read it in a long time. I have a signed copy.
Nice.
The first time I met him, it's like, what book am I going to have him sign? Jadoo was the book. I did not have a first edition of Mothman Prophecies, unfortunately. So I actually got him to sign 3 books, and one of them was Jadoo. But yeah, that's an amazing book. In fact, if you read it, you kind of see why he went in the direction he went later, and why he was interested in what he was interested in later.
And that was a fiction book, right? That was a novel?
No. It's a biography.
Okay.
About a few years of his life, mainly when I think he got an assignment from a magazine from Coronet or True or something like that to travel around the Middle East and just talk about.
He was supposed to be looking for magic, wasn't it? A real person that was doing real magic, and since he was an amateur magician, he went out and I don't think he found anybody that was actually doing something he thought was impossible. There was one in the Himalayas, I think he said.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
If I remember, I read it a few years ago, but I think he said that he had met someone who knew way too much about him, and there was just absolutely no way that this guy was not doing something legit. But for the most part, he exposed things like the Indian rope trick and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, and talked about snake charmers and all that other stuff, but all the stuff that people had always heard, stuff that people had heard about from the Mystic East. Mm-hmm. Finally, in the late 40s, early 50s, he was assigned to go out and do that, and he checked it all out, which is a real Fortean thing to do.
Yeah. And he exposed those tricks. He said, well, this is how they do this is how they do that. And I mean, some of it is pretty interesting on how they pulled some of that off.
Yeah, probably Penn and Teller loved him for that book and then hated him later. Who knows?
Because you had the magician who would climb up the rope and kill his assistant or whatever, and throw the body parts down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When in reality, the assistant was hiding underneath the cloak of the magician.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he climbed up with him or something like that.
Yeah. It was definitely that's a very worthwhile book to track down. It's not particularly cheap most of the time.
Oh, is it? I haven't looked in a long time and seen what because as more people know who he is, I mean, there's less and less copies around.
It might.
Oh no! Anomalist reprinted.
I was just going to say that.
A couple of years ago. So yeah, you can totally buy a copy of Jadoo for, I don't know, $20 or less nowadays.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a reprint. Like Silver Bridge, I would love to have an original copy of the Silver Bridge, but then it was reprinted, I believe, by Illuminate or somebody like that. And then more recently by somebody else. Anyway, these books are all available. Even Woody Derenberger's book, Visit to Lanulos. I think somebody reprinted that too.
Really?
Oh, I need to get that.
Yeah, I know that's one of your favorite stories.
Indeed it is.
All right, let's see. Did you find that article you were looking for? Did we already?
Yes, and I shared it on the Slack channel. I don't know if you see it.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, Big Biologist says Yetis are really just bears, and that's. But is that off of the same research?
No, a different one.
Okay.
Because some people criticize Sykes' assertion that the Yeti was a new species of bear. And then I think this is a far more recent DNA analysis done for a documentary.
Okay.
Yeah, that was what was just in the news like 3 days ago or something. I had 3 people email. It was like, hey, they've explained the Yeti. It's like, yeah, no, they haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, Laura Coloma was like, no, so fast, man. Yeah.
I love the picture that they have on the on the article here.
Yeah.
With
it's the same reaction I have when somebody says we've captured a Bigfoot and he's in a freezer or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean that's not real?
Human mini brains growing inside rat bodies are starting to integrate.
Oh, I posted that on Coast to Coast a few days ago.
It's just
the secret of NIM has come true.
It's such a weird thing to even try and do to grow a miniature version of a human brain inside a rat.
Why are they doing this? Because they want to be able to grow human brain tissue from people that have, brain cancer or an injury or whatever.
I would think. And they've debated whether these brains are conscious, but that also implies that all that you need for consciousness is a brain, and I don't know if that's really the case.
Yeah, that's a whole nother debate. Where does consciousness reside, and is it inside the skull, or is it somewhere else, and we just have access to it, or whatever the hell?
Well, you have the people that it's rare, but the first time I was exposed to it was again in that Holographic Universe book, where they have literally almost no gray matter, but they're perfectly functional people. In fact, sometimes geniuses.
Yeah.
And it's not known until, they do an autopsy after the person dies. I remember the one story of the doctor coming out after their son was killed in a car accident and saying, well, I'm sorry, we couldn't save your special child. And they were like, special child? Like, what are you talking about? And they were like, well, his brain was all liquid. He probably couldn't possibly have been very functional. And they were like, he had like a 150 IQ,
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that, that whole area of when people get smacked on the head or whatever, or have an accident, and suddenly they're like geniuses.
Yeah.
What is that all about? It sounds like a tuning mechanism has been knocked into place or whatever, and that you can. It's not a latent property of the matter in your brain. It's a latent property of how it interacts with the quantum foam or the information basis of information in the universe or whatever the hell. It's not like you said, Soraya. It's not the amount of gray matter. It's what it's accessing and how it accesses it.
Yeah, and they're showing more and more that the size of the brain doesn't necessarily have anything to do with intelligence.
No, not at all. Yep. If that was the case, then whales should be running the planet, I guess.
Right.
Opposable thumb thing. Yeah, exactly.
Didn't Neanderthals have a higher brain capacity than Homo sapiens?
I think so, yeah. I read some article, I can't remember where it was. It said if you showed a Neanderthal a video game, you could probably figure it out in about an hour.
Yeah, well, they would. It's been speculated that the Neanderthal was actually smarter than us. It's just the way things went that they ended up being the ones that got wiped out. It's not because we were smarter. We may have been
perhaps
more
they were less aggressive.
Yeah, they were hippies.
There was definitely a diminution in brain capacity in the human species when we went from hunter-gathering to agriculture. So there was a diminution in not only brain capacity but also in size, because of a lack of nutrition. So much for agriculture being this great boon to humanity. Some people say that it wasn't any of the sort.
So does that mean that our brains are going to diminish now since we rely so heavily on the internet?
And that is that idea of the hunter gatherer being the better way of existing was what's the name of the book? I had him on.
What was the book about?
Michael Marshall Smith. And that's basically it. That there's an organized group trying to bring us back to a hunter-gatherer society, and they're the ones behind all the horrible things that happen, like the mass shootings and stuff like that.
Well, that's impossible. I mean, you cannot go back to hunter gathering if you have 8 billion people on the planet.
Well,
that's why they're going to kill most of them.
Yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. Let me see if I can find that. It's like the Wicker Man.
It's that 500 million on the Georgia Guidestones. That's what that's all about.
Right.
Yeah, true.
He writes under Michael Marshall and Michael Marshall Smith. The Straw Men came out in 2002.
Did you interview that guy?
Yes. Yeah.
You got to get me in touch with him.
He's really into Fortiana too. His next book is going to be layered in Fortiana. But yeah, the Straw Man, the Lonely Dead, and Blood of Angels are all about this sort of hidden group that's trying to, kick civilization back into that hunter-gatherer type of an existence, and it's really brilliant.
Is that so that we can have higher brain capacity?
They feel that is the way life should be.
Oh.
There's a couple tirades the main character goes on that are just so well written. You read through them and you're just like, wow.
Oh, so these are fictional books.
Yes. Oh yeah, they're definitely fiction. They're definitely horror too. I mean, this is like, it's pretty rough.
But just a way for him to get this idea across.
Right. Right.
Fictional setting. I gotcha.
Well, my friend Christopher Ryan, he wrote the book Sex at Dawn. He's now finishing his book Civilized to Death, that talks about how civilization hasn't really brought all these great things that we think that it did. Like, for example, the myth that in prehistoric times, the average lifespan was only like 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's totally not true at all. It's true that they had that for most of our history there was a higher rate of mortality among infants, and that's when you take that into account.
Right.
That's when you have you get that number of 30 35 years as the average lifespan. But that's just a numbers game. If we took into account nowadays, now that we have allegedly raised the lifespan to 78 in industrialized nations, but we don't take into account, all the mortality of abortions. If we took that into account, then probably we also get a very similar average lifespan. So
that's a great
reality,
point.
We've only raised the lifespan expectancy probably 7 to 8 years between, the prehistory to modern times, and what's the cost of that?
Because if you go to an old graveyard, so the graves from the 18th or even to the 19th century, you'll see a lot of older people. The ages are a lot older. If you got over the childhood diseases and got past whatever stupid accident might happen to you in your teenage years, people could live to the 80s or 90s. It was easy.
Yeah.
People were very strong, very hardy people. Yeah.
Once you survive 12 years old, you probably will be able to live until 70s.
But the question with our expanded lifespans today is it always worth it?
Exactly.
You have people whose quality of life is absolutely abominable because they can't. You're not allowed to check out when you're in pain, when you have diseases that disable you.
Yeah, so what we're now doing is we're extending the years of infirmity that senior citizens have. So your last years you live totally in misery. Like you said, okay, you're going to live until 90 or 85, but from 70 to 85, you're going to have all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
You're not really going to have a quality of life. You're going to have to be depending on other people to take care of you. So I don't know if that's really such a great outcome.
You're going to have Alzheimer's. You're going to, not be able to function properly.
Yeah.
And I don't want that.
Yeah. And you go to, other cultures, you're like, I don't know, like Japan or not even Japan, small villages in Europe, in France, in Sardinia, whatever. And you find centennials who are able to take care of themselves, who are still going to work, who go and have a drink with their friends, and they're fully conscious. They're still, pretty active. That they have a level of activity that will put to shame many people in their 50s, and scientists can't really figure it out. They try to say, oh well, it's the Mediterranean diet. Maybe it's all that, that olive oil that they take, or maybe the something in the red wine, right? What I don't remember that compound that's in one that they were trying to say, oh well, maybe this helps because it thins out the blood and it helps you with the heart. And if Chris Ryan said, the hell is not, the trick in the Mediterranean diet is because the way the people eat in the Mediterranean, and they take their time, and they're not always on a rush, they're not, looking at their clock because they have to finish their meal in 30 minutes to get back to the office. Stress is the ultimate killer.
Yes.
Yeah. And plus, there's ways I think too that diet could have something to do with it, especially here, like the U.S., where there's so many chemicals in the food, and a lot of people just eat fast food all the time.
Like Trump.
Yeah.
I just read some article today that that's all he eats is like McDonald's and Del Taco and Burger King and stuff, which is, I don't know if that's true or not, but it would. I don't know if it explains a lot of things, but it's kind of frightening.
Yeah.
How does that food affect you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to something we predicted in the last news show we did. A flat Earth researcher told he can't blast himself into the sky at 500 miles per hour on public lands.
See, they're hiding it, man. I told they're hiding it.
That guy doesn't even believe in the flat Earth thing. He reached out to them for
money.
For funding, and he just said, okay, if you give me this amount of money, I'll stick your I'll stick your name on the side of my rocket, and I don't even think he cares about that, but he's trying to put up a front of actually caring about it and giving it lip service. All he cares about is being Evel Knievel, really. So that's what he's trying to do. If you see, I watched videos. He's like launched a few other steam-powered rockets, and one of them he was actually in, and he almost killed himself. They showed video of him being pulled out, like, because he basically got smashed into the seat, then crashed into the ground.
Oh, man.
He's probably going to kill himself. But the one thing I thought when he said he was going to do that is, like, I started looking on my map, the map I use for flying. It shows you when there's a flight restriction. It's called a TFR, temporary flight restriction, like when they're going to have an air show or the military's coming or the president's town or whatever. Nothing for that. It's like, well, I guess he doesn't have permission from the FAA to do it. But the thing is, I think he was doing it in an area where the airspace was uncontrolled.
Yeah.
So that didn't really make as much of a difference as doing something that's going to endanger other people on public land, which I think was what they were concerned about.
I don't know. I mean, I'm about to say something horrible, but I think the only reason why this guy wasn't arrested, because he's trying to construct what is obviously essentially a ballistic missile, on homeland, is because he's white. Imagine if he was, someone, he had a name like Mahmoud, whatever,
Yeah.
The guy would have been, he would be in Guantanamo right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
No matter what he will say, it's just to try to prove the flatter. Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
But it's definitely an amusing article. What did Ren say? He loves the carny aspect of the guy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he should be. He should be traveling with a sounds like an old time carnival. Watch the Daredevil in his steam powered rocket go, wherever.
Did he go to some organization, or
Yeah,
did he
like
get
one of the
this?
flat
Did he get this crowdfunded by a bunch of flat Earth people?
I think he crowdfunded it.
I think he crowdfunded it, but also I think they gave him the biggest chunk, which is why they got the right to stick their name on the side of the rocket.
Yeah, well, I think initially he wasn't getting that much of a response, and then he did the whole flat Earth thing, and they were like, "Oh, here, have money."
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, how stupid do they have to be? How high up? I don't think they thought that he was going to prove the Earth was flat by flying up 1,800 feet. But I think what they thought was they'll get more people paying attention to their movement and get more people in it, and all that. I guess because you can. Why don't flat earthers send a balloon up with a camera on it by themselves?
Yeah.
Now that's something that some people on Facebook were saying good for him because regardless of whether the Earth is round or flat, he is trying to look for answers for himself. And when I read that, my response was, you cannot try to approach empirically every single aspect of your life. There's a point in which you have to rely on what other people tell you. Like, for example, I've never been to France. Does that mean that I have to question the existence of the Eiffel Tower until I see it with my own two eyes? So what about vaccines? I'm sorry, I went there but there's some things that some people will tell you, that people with authority, because they are scientists, they have devoted their life trying to research stuff, and what gives you the right to question that? Just because you are someone who distrusts authority. I think that is this thing with the flat Earth is only the tip of an iceberg that has been, in development over a great number of years on the internet, which is this mistrust of authority, and I think it's a really big problem that we're facing.
Well, authority has a bad record in telling truth to people too. So it's their fault, but it's also people's fault, but not making more of an effort to figure out. And it takes an effort. You can't just consume information. You have to actually seek out, and you can now. You can seek out information. The only problem is people seek out information that conforms to their predetermined beliefs.
True.
But yeah,
True.
I mean, we wouldn't be in this place if people had been lied to so many damn times in the past.
Right.
I look at the flat Earth thing. I look at it kind of conspiratorially. I think it's just disinformation that's out there just to make people in the other truther movements, like the 9/11 truth and the other these conspiracy theorists in general, just look foolish. I think it's just planted there just to make people look stupid.
Really? I think people are dumb enough that they actually believe it.
No, I think some people.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about even giving it any lip service or publicity. But the thing is, you no matter what you come up with, as long as it's crazy enough, you'll get attention for it.
Well, it's what Red Pill said and what you said, Greg. It's okay. We got lied to about Kennedy. We got lied to about this. We got lied to about that. So people expect to be lied to. And so everybody now these people think, well, we're being lied to for some reason by the shape of the Earth. So it's just there's a certain point of, well, no, you're not being lied to about that, but people are being lied to about other things, but it's just pushing that to the extreme.
Yeah.
and there's a precedence, of crazy ideas being embraced by societies which used to, have a higher standard of logic. For example, take Germany. Germany. There was a time when the unofficial language of science was German. Because most of the papers that were written in peer-reviewed magazines were written
my dad
in
had to learn German actually to get his
Exactly,
degree in chemical engineering. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when the National Socialist Party took over, there were two main theories that were kind of like proposed and took a lot of prestige because they were supported by high members of the National Socialist Party, by the Nazi Party. One was the theory of the eternal ice, which was kind of like going with the idea of Hyperborea and the some mythical Aryan Genesis story, and the idea it's as crazy as theory, that there were several moons that rose and fell and created, cycles of destruction, and basically the idea that the universe, the main source of the universe. I'm making a terrible job describing it, but that the universe mainly was made of ice, right? And there was the other story that of the hollow Earth, that basically that we're living in the interior of the Earth. Right. And those theories, as stupid that as they sound, were took seriously, by the Nazi Party. There were actually expeditions to Antarctica that were, paid or they were made in the middle of the Second World War, just to prove if we actually lived in a hollow Earth. So that
they're going to fire a rocket and say that it was going to land in a certain place because it was concave instead of convex or whatever.
I just had a few shows ago, we had a historian on that wrote a book about this very subject, and he calls all this the supernatural imaginary. That when in times of financial stress or social stress, people will begin to embrace just the weirdest ideas that you can possibly imagine. And Flat Earth kind of fits into this. Like, where did this come from?
Oh, it's been around
all
for
of a
long
sudden.
Time.
Well, yeah, of course. But people, when I was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, people would just laugh at this.
Yeah, well,
and then all of a sudden, Facebook, social media comes up, and people, it just comes out of nowhere. And people have embraced this flat Earth theory, and a lot of people think that there are people that I have seen on social media that like this flat Earth theory actually gives them purpose now.
Well, back in, I think we figured it was around 1999, on the last exit, we would do a kind of a joke show called the We Love Satan show. We would make fun of how some people thought, if you're into metal, you're into Satan. And we actually had someone say it, and that's kind of what, he said something about us all being into Satan. I said, that's right, we all love Satan. And I thought, oh my God.
Yeah, the whole satanic panic stuff.
Right. And he wasn't freaked out about it. He just made this assumption that if you listen to metal, you were a Satanist or a devil worshiper or whatever. And I was like, God, that could be really fun to play with. And so we did a show with Satan, Cthulhu, and a representative of the Flat Earth Society. And this was 99. And my friend who I wanted to play the Flat Earth guy, I'm going, hey, I want you to do this. And he's like, wait, this is really a thing? I'm like, yeah, this is really a thing. I mean, it's real small and stuff. And he did it great. I mean, he took the whole religious view of it, and he hit it a home run with it. He was absolutely hilarious. And he's just like, I can't believe anyone believes this. And here we are less than 20 years later, and now it's a thing,
Oh, yes.
The same thing that Nazis are a thing again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Coincidence? I think not.
And of course, the other story that involved the Flat Earth was Flat Earth Society stuns Twitter after informing Elon Musk Mars is round, Earth isn't.
Flat, yeah. I saw.
What?
Why would he be stunned?
There was that
Stunned
Twitter
into
from
laughter?
Elon Musk.
What was that, Greg?
I said, why would he be stunned? Do you mean stunned into paroxysms of laughter?
Well, it said Twitter stunned. I don't know how Twitter gets stunned.
I don't know how Twitter gets stunned either. I have no idea. I think Anonymous would know how to do that.
Because Elon posted, "Why is there no Flat Mars Society?" And the Flat Earth Society responded with, "Hi, Elon. Thanks for the question. Unlike the Earth, Mars has been observed to be round. We hope you have a fantastic day."
Yeah, I've not gotten into it enough to ask them how they think that, satellites and rockets and all that work. Or, there was a guy.
Well,
Yeah.
you see, that is just all part of the conspiracy.
Well, there was a flat Earth guy on Coast the other day, a few nights ago, that I listened to him, and he said that they don't actually go into orbit; they just drop into the ocean when nobody's looking. So that
Oh my God!
yeah,
Yes, that's what I've heard, and I've also heard that the sun and the moon are just they're just lights that travel across the dome.
Right. And they're small. They're not big.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other one. I don't know. I was like, I guess he's in on the conspiracy, Elon Musk. Otherwise, he's wasting a lot of money sending things up that go into orbit.
Of course he is.
I believe. Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about, Greg. I heard him on another show a while back. It's exactly the same. I think it's the same guy.
Yeah, I can't remember. He's kind of a younger guy. He and I think he said, well, people ask me, and here's another one. They asked me about, well, how is it that ships and things on the ocean, as they go further away, it looks like they're going down, and then you can't see them anymore if it's round. He goes, no, that's not true. If you have a good enough telescope or binoculars, you can still see them.
Oh my God!
Did you guys know that there was a meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina? Right,
Yes.
there was a conference.
Yeah, the first
And
one.
I'm thanking God that it was in North Carolina and not Tennessee.
Why? Because you would have gone?
I'd have gone.
I might have gone too, honestly.
Yeah, there was this video from Red Eyes, and that were covering that Flat Earth conference. And to me, the punchline came at the very end when one of those guys who were interviewed, when he finally realized that he was being interviewed for Red Eyes, and said, "Oh my God, I'm a big fan. And if I were running Red Eyes, I will be greatly concerned about that." That's something that really troubles me. The idea that
They don't care.
well, they should care, because I feel that there's something about the paranormal community that's starting to turn very toxic very quickly. And
Agreed.
It should be of great concern for all of us that are involved in it.
Red Ice, though, has moved away from paranormal stuff and has gone into some really sketchy political stuff, as far as I can tell.
You mean right wing?
Yeah, but like really,
Well, I think the flat Earth stuff fits into that. It fits into that, guys.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, well, if you won't listen to anybody's point of view because it doesn't agree with your point of view, and they're full of crap if they don't agree with you, then that is the textbook example of somebody that's into every aspect of the paranormal with no filters on whatsoever. And for the mere fact that the press or whatever, academia or whatever, is telling you something, that it automatically means it's not true. And that, unfortunately, I think that's a feature both of political extremism, whether left or right, and people who are very heavily into the paranormal and don't want to hear anything that has anything to do with. I think we can explain this one case. You explain one case, and they go nuts.
yeah.
That's not explained. It's like, yeah, but 99.9% of people, even your friends, ufologists, say it's explained. Nope. Okay.
And that comes down to belief. They want to believe in something, and you're threatening it.
I'll tell you what. I won't tell you who it is, and I don't even know if I've said this on my show. I met a guy who's I guess a fairly kind of a mid-level paranormal. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to be mean or rude here publicly, but he told me that he said, "Do you realize that there were a motorcycle gang when they invaded the a little town in California right after World War II? They and scared everybody." I said, "Oh, you mean the thing that the Wild One was based on?" He said, "Yes, exactly. Do you know the name of that group? It was a group of World War II pilots. They had the leather jackets, all that. They were just they weren't in the war anymore, so they wanted to go out and cause problems because war is different. You're in it like this total weird level, and they're back in civilian life, and they're kind of freaked out. So they formed these motorcycle gangs and started terrorizing people." Anyway, he said, "Do you realize that the name of that gang was?" And I said, "No." He said, "They were called the Booze Fighters." I said, "That's one of the coolest things I ever heard." He said, "Do you realize that they called themselves that because they had the Foo Fighters they had encountered in World War II?" I said, "Really?" I said, "That's a really cool little bit of information. Where'd you find that out?" And he goes, "Oh, it's just obvious to me." And I actually think I said, "So you made that up?"
He didn't make it up.
I said, "I don't have to make it up. It's obviously true."
He figured it out.
The first thing I thought was, "Why are you reinforcing my prejudice? Please don't do this." So that's, as you're all saying here, that's becoming more prevalent, and as Red Pill says, it's frightening.
Yeah.
I absolutely acknowledged that he'd made it up, but he had no problem with it whatsoever.
All right, let's do this one because this is very interesting. Bacteria found on the outside of the International Space Station could be alien life, says cosmonaut.
I saw that one, yeah.
Uh-oh, zombie apocalypse.
Has it been determined that it could be? People are this fake news headline grabbing thing, but I think it also pointed out in the article that I saw that other things have hitchhiked up onto the station, or it's there were rockets will be going up in the atmosphere, and there's bacteria and viruses and things in the upper atmosphere.
Right.
And they kind of latch onto the station, and then they kind of just
Well, it says bacteria that had not been there during the launch of the ISS module were found on the swabs they take occasionally of the outside of the vessel. They have flown from somewhere in space and settled on the outside hull. He said similar missions have found bacteria that could survive temperatures between negative 150 degrees Celsius and 150 degrees. That bacteria appears to have made its way from Earth, but suggests that it can survive in the harsh environments of space.
Yeah, well, that's a panspermia thing. Maybe some of that stuff hitchhiked and came here, whoever knows back when, and became the life we know it now. But yeah, I think the thing is like finding life from but I don't know if they can determine that they've determined that it's actually extra Earth,
extraterrestrial. Yeah,
extraterrestrial, and not something that was hitchhiked up on the rocket or the module as it came up.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I don't know. What if there's a gigantic volcanic eruption? That can actually get bacteria on a height akin to the space station, which is really not really that far away,
They said in the article that it's actually some bacteria and virus and all that live in the upper atmosphere. It just gets blown up there.
Yeah.
Naturally, it's there. I mean, it's exposed to all this radiation, a lot more radiation than on the Earth and all, and it survives fine. It just lives up in that part of the atmosphere.
Yep. And I mean, and that's the thing. Life tends to survive even in incredibly harsh environments. And we keep looking for life in Earth-like, in environments we could thrive in.
There's a book called, I think it's called Weird Life. I read it a while back, and basically it's about extremophiles, like things that live near volcanic vents and in pools of arsenic and all that. And that life can occur in places that we do not, that's why they're thinking about there might be life underneath the ice on Titan, I think it is. And they're sending I think they may be sending a probe there. Because they went through in the plumes of water that shoot up from, I think, the South Pole. They actually went through and I think they flew through it with one of the probes, but it wasn't designed to figure out if there was any viable biological material in that.
Right. Well, I suspect there's probably life everywhere. It's just that we're not capable of recognizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, there probably is. It's just in a way, we're trapped in our own view of what life could be instead of, something may be completely the rock may be conscious, but you don't know it because that's not your idea of consciousness or not your idea of something that's a function and part of the whole of the whole of existence and matter, which may be connected. I'm starting to sound like a crazy person, so just stop me now.
Do you think that's kind of like a quasi clickbait kind of headline too?
Yeah. What, the space station one?
Yeah, it did say
maybe alien life.
Well, sure.
That's.
Can you prove it didn't happen?
That just makes me want to click on it so I can.
Hey, I did.
As did I.
It worked. It pulled me in. Sorry.
I mean, it's not something that's that hard to believe could happen, because these things can exist in such extreme environments. It's not, for them to have come through space, it probably happens quite often. Whether or not they take root on our planet is a completely different thing.
Yeah, who knows? It may be. Oh well, we didn't land in on the gas clouds on Neptune, so I guess the thing just dies.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's interesting because if there's life that is thriving on the upper atmosphere, after how many years of independent evolution, could it be considered a totally alien life form?
Yeah.
Well, it's still surviving with water and oxygen, or whatever it's surviving on, the gases and liquids that are available on the Earth.
Yeah, but we're also looking for extraterrestrial life on Mars that thrives on on water.
Yeah,
water is a very kind of like a universal dissolvent. So there's the argument that most life would thrive on water.
Have any of you seen the movie Life?
I saw the very end. I saw the very end of it.
It's very alien-esque, but I thought it was really good. It's about them pulling an organism off of Mars and reanimating it. And then, of course, it's a horror movie, so it gets out of control.
It gets bad real quick.
Yeah, yes, it does. But it's fascinating because it's not out of the realm of possibility, really.
Yeah.
Here's an article from 2013 from Popular Science. Earth upper atmosphere below freezing, nearly without oxygen, flooded by UV radiation, is no place to live. But last winter, scientists from the Georgia Institute of Technology discovered that billions of bacteria actually thrive up there. Expecting only a smattering of microorganisms, the researchers flew 6 miles above Earth's surface in a NASA jet plane. They pumped outside air through a filter to collect particles. Back on the ground, they tallied the organisms, and the count was staggering. 20% of what they assumed to be just dust or other particles was alive. Earth, it seems, is surrounded by a bubble of bacteria.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing up there, but they may be essential to how the atmosphere functions. That's one idea. Anyway, I won't keep reading, but I just kind of wanted to see, what's going on in the upper atmosphere? Are they endemic to the upper atmosphere? It sounds like maybe they are.
Yeah.
It's just waiting to cause the zombie apocalypse. That's all it is. It's the blob.
Yeah, until they shoot some ionizing thing up in the atmosphere, and then they'll just fall because they'll be charged differently, and people will breathe them in, and that's when it starts.
Well, I remember one of the there's this idea of what would life on Jupiter look like, and it would be something that would kind of these organisms that would have to float into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be like airships.
Yeah.
I saw that when I was a kid. I think like some idea of what some kind of being on Jupiter would be, and it was like these giant things that flew through the air. They're basically big, lighter than air tubes with eyes on them. It was cool.
Isn't that a theory of for UFOs that they're actually like living organisms?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was Trevor Constable's idea in the 50s, and when he wrote that book with it, they live in the sky.
Yeah. And it's definitely been played around with. I mean, as like Andrew Collins presents the idea of them being plasma intelligences.
Yeah.
And I think there's some weight behind that.
Yeah, it's also us, once again, trying to figure out stuff from our point of view.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we find other life, it's probably sitting there already. It's just that we don't really know how to look at it.
True.
Yeah.
All right, one last news article, because we can't go without mentioning this one. Armed with assault rifle, Pierce County man prepares to battle the lizard people.
I saw that headline on Coast.
Oh my God. The man told law enforcement that President Trump had called to warn him.
Oh no.
The man ended up being sent to a hospital for treatment and a mental health evaluation. At least he didn't cause another shooting incident. They said a state trooper later reported that a man got out of a Cherokee, was waving around an AK-47 and a pistol. A number of troopers and deputies converged. The man put the guns back in the car. He was ordered to the ground, where he began to scream about sending in the news and the lizard people. He resisted officers trying to handcuff him, and told the sheriff's department says the man told the deputy that he'd snorted methamphetamine to lose weight and that he was taking prescribed morphine. And then he said, "The meth doesn't make me crazy, man. The lizard people are real." He said President Trump had called his house in Eatonville, warned about the lizard people, and said the Alpha Dragon had taken his family hostage.
Yeah,
No, you Snopes this, right? I really this is true 100%. This is not.
I did not Snopes it, but it's none of it's really all that surprising. I mean, it's from an actual news source.
Yes. Hey, it's on Coast, so you know it's from an actual.
Oh, of course.
No, it's from the Como News in, I guess, wherever Como is.
Yeah. Is it Utah?
Maybe. No, this is some. Yeah, I don't know what KOMO is. Oh, yeah, it probably is a news station.
Yeah. That's what it looks like, anyway.
Yeah, Seattle. KOMO News, Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
It's a local news report.
I mean, it's nothing too outrageous, really. It's just basically a guy on drugs and the concept of lizard people.
Yeah,
that happens all the time.
It's fine that people have crazy ideas about stuff. It's just that if they try to impose them on others with their lifestyle by force or guns or whatever, that's when things start having problems. Like George Carlin said, people start wearing hats and gathering in groups, and you have to start worrying. Although this guy was by himself. So.
This guy was what?
This guy was by himself, so at least that's hopefully that's all we're going to hear about that.
Yeah.
So there's
Lauren Coleman on to talk about copycat things like that.
There's plenty of people out there to believe in the lizard people, though. So
well, that's it, and that's how this stuff trickles down in a bad way. But like I said, at least it didn't end in another mass shooting incident.
Yeah.
So when
it's funny, the mass shooting people, they're never on meth.
Yeah.
Apparently, at least according to the news, they're totally fine drug wise. Not like meth crazed wacko kills 15. You never hear that.
Yeah,
they're not organized
why
enough.
Is that? Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
And they're just trying to lose weight, man.
Yeah, just trying to lose. This just happens to be the way I'm losing weight. Yeah. Nazis, I think they invented a certain type of meth and were giving it to the soldiers so they could fight longer. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
The meth head kind of has to focus on the next time they're going to get meth, so that's part of the reason I would assume.
Yes,
that
exactly.
They don't cause the mass shootings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you never hear of a meth addict or of an opium addict ever really bothering anybody else except when they're stealing from one or two people to try and get the money for the next whatever so they can get their next meth or heroin.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Anything else that's happened that we haven't mentioned?
Gee, tons.
Yes. Anything come to mind though?
I read that an article that NASA had managed to fire up the
the
engines
thrusters
of the
on
Voyager.
Voyager 1.
Yeah,
Really?
after 35 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, very.
Especially since it's not really in space; it fell back into the ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they said one, and it's Paul Kimball put up something about that on Facebook, and he said, "Good luck, Voyager." If you know what that joke is.
No.
Star Trek.
Star Trek the motion picture.
Oh, okay.
I love that movie.
Yeah, that was a really good movie. And the I think the report was that they wanted to reorient it because there's still some of the instruments worked, strangely enough, and it's in interstellar space now, so they're just like it's heading toward the Oort cloud or something. So they want to get some more data out of it. Also, Voyager 2, which actually hasn't gone into interstellar space yet, and had these two like little, I don't even know what they are. I don't know what the thrusters are operated by or what fuel they use, but I think the main ones weren't working anymore, and these two little like weird ass ones that are barely working. They sent a message to it's like, reorient yourself this way, and damned if the things didn't reorient the craft in the way that they wanted it. So that's and what's the craft, Miguel? He said 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
So that's insane. That's great.
Voyager 1 was launched, I think, in 1977.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So 40 years?
Wow.
Yep.
40-year-old spacecraft that probably weighs a couple of tons and is run on coal or something. Still working.
Yes, which they didn't expect to continue working.
And what did they say in the article there, Red Pill, that they hadn't even, I guess they hadn't even tried in like 20 or 30 years.
Really?
Probably, yeah.
So it's like they told these little impulse thruster things to work 30 years after the last time they told them to work, and they worked.
That's really awesome. Maybe we'll get something else interesting out of it.
Yeah, is Voyager the one with the Voyager 1 have the plaque on it, or is that 2, or both of them?
It's a good question. I think it's Voyager 2, one with the gold record.
The Pioneer had it. I think had something on it as well.
Oh, okay.
True. Yeah.
The Carl Sagan one, the one with the naked people on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Pioneer had the record.
No. I think Voyager had the record because that's part of the plot in movie Starman.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, I guess we'll bring this episode to a close, and I thank all of you. Tell people where they can find you, starting with Adam.
Find me at www.conspiranormal.com and conspiranormal.podomatic.com. And I guess you could find me here sometimes, too.
Yes, indeed. And Red Pill?
Well, you can find me mainly on the Daily Grail, where I write, I do the news briefs and for Thursdays and such. Also, I have my own website, absurdbydesign.com. And also, please check out the Absurd by Design store on Zazzle, in case you are still working on your Christmas shopping. Maybe you want to grab one of my designs for one of your crazy ass relatives that maybe they like Mothman or something. That would be a fitting gift.
All right, and Greg.
RadioMysterioso.com, RadioMysterioso.com. There's ads for the t-shirt on there, and That's about it. That's my main point of contact right now. About to release a book with Adam Gorightly on the contactee movement with pictures that haven't been seen, I think, maybe ever, at least in a very long time.
Really?
Yay.
Yeah, from a private collection. So just finishing that up probably in the next month or two. Oh, Pioneer plaque. It was on the Pioneer. The records were on Voyager, and the plaque was on Pioneer in 1972, it says.
Okay. Well, there we go. All right. I thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.